Due to network issues, it is back up and running. So, Mr. City Manager, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize. We all get used to working on network drives and the cloud and all of those fun things. And then, of course, when the connections get severed, you can't access or even pull information to then put on a thumb drive and advance it some other place. So I appreciate our IT staff getting this up online here. And I'm pleased to give you this month's city manager's report. Here are the important dates to remember, several along the way. Probably the most important one, aside from the next city council meeting and the planning commission, is Halloween. So that's on October 31st, of course. But we have chamber meetings, the annual chamber event that's on October 16th, the annual meeting there, and then the council meeting on the 21st, planning commission on the 28th. So one other thing you'll want to be aware of, I'll put this up in the presentation a little bit later in the evening. The Main Street Summit will be held in Bismarck on the 29th, 30th, and 31st of October. So you'll want to be thinking about that. We have several staff, and I think some of you have expressed interest in going as well. We'll start first with construction updates, and as everyone knows, it has been raining like crazy. I think we've got 8 inches or so of rain for the month of September. That has created a heck of a problem for not just the harvest, but also for our construction activities all across the city. And it's created lots of different delays in regards to construction. And currently, we're about 2 to 3 weeks behind due to weather on phase 1 of the flood control project. We'd hoped to have 3rd Street open sooner than the end of the month, but with the delays, that's going to push the opening of 3rd Street a little bit longer. The contractor is now having to mitigate for wet soil. We can't get compaction and proper soil approval from the engineers, the geotechnical engineers, so we're going to have to amend soils and those sorts of things. Of course, that costs money and takes time, and that's also adding to the delays as well. But we have tried to maintain pedestrian accesses throughout the project. We don't see that changing at this point in time either. For phase 2 and 3, the flood walls and pump station work continues, underground utility work continues. There's really not been too much of a change from the last month's report, other than things are progressing, but a little bit more slowly because of the rain. 16th will continue to be head-to-head through October as well. That was another road that we tried to open up a little bit sooner, but that's just not going to happen given the delay with the weather. The Broadway maintenance project, similar story here. We'd hope to be all the way Moving on, we've had a lot of things that have been fun and exciting over this last month. One of them was the Sister City visit. We did have a delegation of 8 Norwegians that came over officially as part of the delegation to meet with us. And this was an opportunity for us to get together not only with the delegation, but also with the other partners to the Sister City Agreement. And that includes the Minot Area Development Corporation, Minot State University, the public schools, Hustfest, and then, of course, the City of Cheyenne representatives. So with that, here were the representatives that visited us, mostly for the public's viewing pleasure. We had a current council member and also former mayor of the City of Cheyenne, the former city manager of Cheyenne, a leader of the School and Cultural Board, a trade and industry department head for the City of Cheyenne, and an advisor to the school administration that also came as well, in addition to a couple others that visited. This was pretty exciting for us. When we were, the mayor and I, in Cheyenne in May, we knew that the election was going to occur in September this year for the city, and it wasn't certain that anyone would be able to come over. So we were delighted to find out that we had 8 folks come over, so we're really pleased about that. We had a number of things that we did with the delegation while they were here, including a variety of different types of tours, the official reception and dinner. We had the Sister City business meeting, governor's dinner and reception, commemoration to Sondre Norheim. We had a 5-hour business meeting that we didn't expect. I think we kind of thought that would take an hour, to an hour and a half, but there was so much information exchanged and so many opportunities that were brought up that the meeting had to be scheduled a few times, actually, in order to get all that work done. School tours and meetings, tours of the Air Force Base, agriculture and ranch tours, Hustfest, I mean, the list goes on. It was all packed into about 5 short days during their visit. They were extremely gracious and are looking very forward to coming back next year as well. Let's move on to the census. I just wanted to sort of advise the council and the community that we have a census complete count committee. It's been established for several months now. The work of the committee is progressing nicely. Alderman Olson will probably give you an update on the liaison reports in 2 weeks at the next city council meeting. But essentially the goal of the committee is to have every single citizen counted. We believe we're pretty close to the 50,000 person threshold. Of course, that's a big number for us. I've mentioned that before because that means that we would become eligible for entitlement funds from the Community Development Block Grant Program of the federal government, and that could potentially give us anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 of entitlement money every year in our budget thereafter. So that's pretty important. There are a lot of activities that the committee is working on, including marketing campaigns and advertising campaigns. And I wanted to just put a plug out for our citizens who might have a little downtime and want to get involved in this. The census is currently hiring enumerators as well as other positions throughout our region. And of course, they're not bad paying jobs. So if you're interested, you want to go to the federal website and log on and give them your information. We will also be pushing very hard the online portion of the census registration because the more people we can get registered online, the less time and expense we'll have sending enumerators around house to house to house to try to get those folks that didn't submit their information online. A couple quick updates on the NDR, National Disaster Resiliency Program. The first one is housing. The multifamily low to moderate income housing project known as the Milton Young Towers improvements is progressing. The authority is reviewing the engineering request for proposal, and we hope to make a final decision later this month. Also, the single family low to moderate income resilient homebuyer program, we anticipate about 7 gap financing closings in total by mid-October, which is pretty exciting for us, seeing that this is just kind of continuing to gain momentum as we go. The City Hall project, we have a massive review of documents that are being undertaken for 2 buildings in our downtown. We're looking at technical memorandum. We're looking at environmental information that's available. We're doing essentially records research right now. And that's in thanks to our city engineer who's leading this effort with his team. And we do hope that we'll have a collection of all this information to be put into a technical summary that then we can bring back to the City Council and help provide information that will lead us to the next decision-making step in the City Hall project, which is, sort of what to do next with this information and where possibly to go and what the options are available to us. On the buyout program, areas 6 and 6A, which you recently approved, just wanted to let you know we're sending general information notices this month, and we do intend to have a neighborhood meeting. I think that was important to either Alderman Wolski or Alderman Straight. I can't remember which. So we have made adjustments in our acquisitions process and are being attentive to that. The Center for Technical Education portion of the NDR program continues. We have identified a couple of Trinity buildings, and I have spoken with the CEO of Trinity, who is open to exploring the potential for those buildings to be used, or one of those buildings to be used for the Center for Technical Education. So the 2 college presidents have taken it upon themselves to go and tour the building or buildings that they're interested in, and we're just awaiting word back as to whether or not that one or more of those buildings might work, and to kind of figure out a game plan going forward after we pull the team back together. On the downtown gathering space, I won't go into too much detail because, of course, this is an agenda item on tonight's City Council agenda, and there will be much more information shared during that presentation. So I'll just kind of glaze over this pretty quickly. Site 2 property negotiations deadline was September 30th. We had 9 total properties that you might recall. 2 of those properties were city properties on Site 2, and 7 were private. 4 of the 7 private owners do not want to sell. 2 were based on price. They just couldn't get an agreement with the city on price, and 2 just didn't want to sell. Cost reasonableness has been a big concern for the city. The initial assessed value of Site 2 was $890,000. The value of all the private properties in what they requested for purchase price was more than twice that, $1.78 million. And so that doesn't include the added costs of demolition of the sites, relocation of tenants, and site preparation costs, which would still need to be added to the 1.78. So you'll hear more about cost reasonableness as Mr. Zakian comes up and makes his presentation, but that is an enormous hurdle for us because it is one of the requirements under the infamous HUD rules. Lastly, the technical committee met on October 1st because it was important to me that the committee meet right after the September 30th deadline and discuss all of the issues and concerns associated with the gathering space, particularly auditing the process, looking at the entire negotiating timeline, and evaluating the cost reasonableness concerns that I've just discussed. I can tell you that our consultancy, EM Smith, when asked directly, is there any stone that has not been overturned in trying to make Site 2 work? The response was that every effort has been made to reach agreement with all property owners. The committee did debate all of the information that was presented in almost a 2-hour meeting, and then unanimously recommended to move forward to the next location. You'll hear a lot more about that here in just a minute, but just for the purpose of the quick overview in the city manager's report, I thought I would give you that. Next up, the Buy Local Task Force has met. We have agreed that we will try to get our work complete in about 2 months' time. So we hope that by December 1st, we'll be able to start working on a recommendation, if not pull together the final comments in the recommendation and present that at the first meeting in December to the City Council. There's been excellent dialogue with the team from the Chamber and also the City team. There's been some recognition of some limitations of this work. For example, a quick exercise that we did in the task force was to identify some of the limitations associated with the procurement policies that we have to follow based upon the source of money that we're using. For example, the federal government has a different set of rules when you use their money than does the state, than does the city. So we have to make sure that a buy local ordinance works as well as it can with all 3 of those different procurement guidelines. And if it doesn't, we want to try to figure out the best fit for trying to make this work. One of the exercises that we did was to evaluate how much money is sort of at stake here. If you look at the city's recently adopted 2020 fiscal year budget, that was a $275 million budget. Of the $275 million, and these are back of the envelope numbers, so don't get, they're not very precise, but we've estimated about $80 million of that is actual local money. So you might say, well, the other difference is state and federal money, so we might not be able to use the same type of buy local preference that has been entertained here. But the problem is that we leverage quite a bit our local money with state and federal money. And of course, as soon as you use $1 of the state or the federal money, now the entire amount, including the local amount, has to comply with either those state procurement or those federal procurement rules and laws. So we've got our work cut out for us to try to figure out exactly how we're going to make something like this work. But the team is energized and excited, and we're going to see if we can't do the best we can given the time that we have. The Nuisance Properties Task Force has met a few times. We're calling it now the Problem Properties Unit, which sounds kind of exciting. You don't want to be on this list. Essentially, this list is the problem properties we have in the city that are taking an excruciating amount of time to bring into compliance and are costing the city time and resources in doing just that. So recalcitrant properties, essentially. Those that continue to repeat zoning violations or code violations or other sorts of violations. So essentially, we have convened this team of internal and external stakeholders and leaders to attempt to try to identify these properties and identify why these properties continue to be problematic, and to make recommendations for how we can bring them into compliance and then further keep them into compliance as well. So that's the work of this particular team. There'll be more to come as the team gets further along in its work, but I think this is pretty important, and given the fact that there's been added emphasis on the need to bring these types of properties into compliance sooner, I think the timing for this committee has actually been quite good. Next up, Community Engagement Focus Group. This work continues. Essentially, we are in the middle, actually we're near the end, of the work for the focus group. The focus group has met for the last time, and now the staff are reviewing the final comments of the focus group and are making revisions, and we'll send that out for one last review. Then we'll meet with the department heads, and we'll talk with them about what's in this engagement strategy and how they can contribute to it, both its improvement and its implementation. Then, of course, we'll bring all that to you for your consideration. The goal here, again, is to ensure that when we need to engage with our citizens, that we do it in a clear and a timely manner, and that we are consistent on all fronts with regard to our intentions to engage and get feedback to make our programs, plans, projects, and services improved. Next up, I want to talk about a couple operational improvement updates. We have a couple of different performance improvement teams. I think I've mentioned these to you in the past. The employee improvement teams, which is working on recruitment improvements and staff onboarding. Those are two huge components of the staff improvement component of our operation. The recruitment improvements meetings have occurred probably 3 or 4 times right now, and have had to be placed on hold just briefly while we got the last final push of the budget through. And then we got through the Sister Cities events. Now we're going to pick that work back up and hopefully bring that to a close here in the next couple of weeks to 6 weeks or so. Staff onboarding, we're in the research and data collection phase. This is important because we know that based on the research that staff make their decision to stay in an organization. These are national statistics, by the way. Within about 70% of all staff make their decision to stay in an organization within the first 6 months of joining that organization. So it is really important that once we hire somebody, that we do everything in our that's possible to keep them in the organization. And there are a lot of things that we're missing right now in our organization to help them make that transition smoothly and to be to set them up for success early in their short time with the city. The finance improvements team, as you already know, has been making significant progress on advancing the ERP software implementation projects. We have 3 components of that. We're going to be upgrading our financial system software, our asset management system software, which is what Alderman Padragula had mentioned a little bit earlier in regard to collecting statistics and the use of assets and equipment and materials and those sorts of things. And then lastly, the building permit and development component. All of these things will be started, as Alderman Padragula mentioned, this year. But it will be a long time before they're actually online and ready to use. It will be at least probably 12 months before some of these will be fully developed, implemented, tested, and ready to be brought online. We are upgrading from the 20th century to the 21st century, and that's going to take us a lot of time. But I'm very excited, and I want to thank all of you council members for your support in helping us to update these very antiquated systems and to give us the type of data that will help us make better decisions going forward. Next up, other operational updates. We have 2 other improvement teams. One of them is the operational improvement team, which is looking at our permitting processes and trying to streamline those processes both in time and assure that permit fees actually cover costs. We've done some of this work already. You've seen that come to you in the form of building permit revisions, or permit fee rather revisions. That was approved. We appreciate that. We'll continue to look at other costs of services and make sure that our fees cover those costs of services. And we'll be researching centralized purchasing options to also help improve over current processes. Customer improvements team is including the community engagement process and improvements, particularly the engagement strategy that I just mentioned, as well as the customer service standards and training. The standards and training are something that are Human Resources Department is working on and working toward. We've got customer service training that's already started, and we're continuing to expand on that, and we appreciate also your support in that realm too. Moving forward, the team has been asked and encouraged to learn about and begin developing key performance indicators. This is going to be important work for us as we communicate with you, the City Council, on how we are doing on a performance basis on a certain period, particularly yearly or annually basis. So we want to improve our knowledge and understanding of our operational systems. We do that by collecting data, defining and measuring and analyzing that data, and then making the improvements, and then researching how well those improvements are, and then repeating the cycle again. This will allow us to become more data-driven and allow us to make better decisions and adaptively manage all of our work for desired results. So some departments are ahead of others, but all departments are making nice progress and moving forward on this front. It's my hope that we'll be able to bring the preliminary key performance indicators to you sometime first of the year. Okay, we do have to analyze what data is available to us, what it means, how important it is, the frequency and timing of the data release, and what we're going to use as it relates to targets, whether it's going to be arbitrary targets or benchmarks or industry standards or those kinds of things. So there's a lot to sort of figure out here. The team's doing a nice job making progress on that front. As was said a little bit earlier in the presentation, or excuse me, council meeting tonight, we are preparing for snow. Our forecast looks like this for the week. We're going to go essentially from summer/fall immediately to winter in a matter of just a few days. We are preparing for that, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about that. Actually, the forecast looks more like this. We do expect snow beginning essentially Wednesday, and of course Thursday, 3 to 6 inches have been predicted. Friday as well with snow, and then kind of moving into Saturday as well. Now, we don't know if it's going to stick around, if this is the start of winter. We think maybe it's not, but nevertheless, it can create, of course, as you know, headaches and road traveling conditions. This is our snow plan. We decided to put it in a graphic just so everybody, it was easy to read, everybody knows kind of what to do, so everybody's got their role, right? No, actually, we do not want this to be the case. This is not the City of Minot snow plan, so I thought I'd share with you what the snow plan actually looks like. Essentially, crews are dispatched prior to large events to pre-treat the streets. And essentially, we will do sanding events when we expect snow under 3 inches. So we'll go out and sand, in some cases, maybe salt, if we have freezing rain and those kinds of things. Graders are dispatched at about 3 to 4 inches and anything greater than that. The crews will run 24 hours a day. And the snow gates will be used, but everyone needs to keep in mind they only work between about 6 to 10 inches of snow. We get anything more than that, even 10 inches is pushing it. We get anything more than that, and the snow gates just simply don't work. So we do the best that we can with, but the snow event really is what helps dictate whether or not the snow gate's going to be effective. The type of equipment that we have 8 motor graders, 3 truck plows, 3 front-end loaders, 4 skid steers, 7 truck-mounted sanders, with 2 brine tanks, and then 2 snow blowers mounted on the front-end loaders. We have 2 foremen, 16 heavy equipment, and 13 light equipment operators as well. They work around the clock until the snow is removed. It generally takes us about 72 hours to get the entire city cleared of all of what you see on the screen in front of you. We do have a priority. This is all outlined in the snow plan. The staff are educated about the snow plan each and every winter season. And essentially, we start with the snow routes. We have about 30 of those inside the city. Then we hit the school areas and the adjacent streets in and around the school areas. Residential and the central business district are then hit next. In the residential, during the day, we try to hit 2 graders to cover 3 or 4 quadrants at a time. And then the central business district is where we're working at night, of course, trying to keep them open for the next day's business. And then, of course, after all of that, we work on sidewalks. And sometimes we can get to sidewalks if we have additional crew or whatnot a little bit more in advance. And we try to get, there's been more emphasis placed now on key sidewalk corridors as well. This is probably a good time to remind the public that we do have an ordinance that requires people to remove snow from their sidewalks, whether they are in the right-of-way or on their personal property. So that's important. We are as you all know, going to probably be increasing enforcement. We've had a lot more pressure lately, a lot more complaints that have come in, and we'll have an extra code enforcement officer that will be helping us with this starting January. So, well, they won't be hired by January, but we're going to be recruiting for them in January. Okay. Current status for this week. We have the street department watching the weather, and they're going to be monitoring for sand events because we don't expect a ton of snow. The sanders are ready to go today. We already have 2 graders that are outfitted and ready to go with cutting edges. And then our leased machines are being prepared as well. The salt sand mix is ready to go as well, sitting in the covered shed as well. So roads will be cleared, but our gates just aren't ready on the equipment yet. So if we do have an event over this next 3, 4, 5 days, we won't be using the snow gates because they're not quite ready. But they'll be put on here pretty quick. So snow communications, we do intend to continue to get a lot of information out on the snow removal plan as well as operations. There are going to be 12 social media posts. We've already got those scheduled. Videos including how the snow gates work and how sand helps the streets for traction and whatnot. Those are already developed and will be issued. We're going to send out alerts. And as well, I wanted to remind the community that we do have a razor tracking system. So you can go online to this website address and you can pull up exactly where any of the graders or other snowplow equipment is located. And you can see when they've come through your neighborhood or where they are in regards to other neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. And this has been excellent for us because we get a lot of complaints about folks that say, well, you haven't been by. We can pull this information up and sort of see what's going on inside the system. So that's been good. Again, using data to help drive better decision making. A couple of really quick final words here. The APWA, American Public Works Association, nationally has given the Downtown Revitalization Project the Project of the Year award for this year. It's actually quite outstanding. This is a huge honor for the city, and it's a huge honor for the engineers, including our city engineer and our consulting engineers on this particular project. Our project was a $30 million project, and it rated and competed exceptionally well in the project category from $25 to $75 million in value. So we were absolutely excited to win this. This does make the 5th award for that particular project, which is quite exciting for us. Speaking of other awards, the library is doing quite well, and it won the North Dakota Library Association's Library Champion Award for 2018, which is quite exciting. They are also celebrating volunteers this month, or last month, I should say. There have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that have been donated to the Minot Public Library in the form of volunteer hours. And we did recognize at this particular event 2 long-time volunteers, Donald Tank and Carol Stolt, who retired from their service at the library, but they put in more than 1,000 hours over a couple of decades of service to the Minot Public Library. And if you consider now that based on independent sector, which evaluates the value of hourly volunteers, that has been estimated about $25.43 per hour. So you just take that dollar amount, you add it times or multiply it times the number of hours, you can see just how much of an impact these volunteers have on our organization. So we're very, very grateful to them as well. Main Street Summit coming up again, I mentioned at the start of the presentation. This is scheduled for October 29th and 31st. It was excellent 2 years ago when it first started, and the lineup looks exceptionally exciting as well. I would invite anyone who's interested in improving downtown, including the Downtown Business and Professional Association, business owners, city council members, anyone for that matter. This is a summit that you don't want to miss. And I appreciate that our governor has given this quite a bit of time and attention and has lately put a lot of resources to the Main Street Initiative. So this is going to be an exciting summit for everybody. Lastly, I just want to put a plug in for the next City Council meeting. You all know that in 2 weeks we'll be back here again, and one of the big topics of discussion is going to be what to do about recycling in the city of Minot. So we have been placing social media posts and doing advertising and marketing to try to get people aware of and interested and engaged about this particular issue, because we want them to show up at the next City Council meeting and tell you, our City Council, what they think as it relates to recycling. And there are two extremes and everything in between as it relates to the recycling options for the city. So our Deputy Public Works Director is going to be here as well, giving a presentation to talk to you about the recycling options. We'll stand for questions, and then we'll have a nice long conversation about sort of what the direction of the city is for recycling going forward. That's all I had for you. I told you it was a doozy. Thanks for your time and patience. A lot going on lately. I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I do want to also acknowledge that we do have Alderman Janser and Alderman Straight now that our network is back up and working. If we could, Alderman Janser and Alderman Straight, if you could just acknowledge that you're on the line. I will take that as a yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Do we have any questions for our City Manager? Alderman Patagula.
Just really a couple of comments. I guess, first of all, to again say how impressed I am with what you and your management team are doing in terms of improving the quality of data gathering, decision-making, operations, and generally management of the city. And the people at the table here, I think they have the longest perspective on how the city government has operated in 21 years now. And this is markedly different and markedly better than it was back then, and we continue to improve. So I'm very, very excited. As I've said before, I think the new software systems will make a huge difference and present real opportunities for going, as the expression goes, to the next step, the next level. So this is really, really big stuff that's going on here from my perspective. On the more specific side, I like the fact that you're briefing us and the public on the plans for the snow season. The one thing I guess I would urge us to pay attention to is I know we have priorities and everything, is the width of the main thoroughfares, particularly 16th Street and Broadway. They're done, I think, in my opinion, well in terms of an initial pass. But the thing that I'm concerned about, and the only real complaint I have actually, is in terms of the lanes being narrower than normal. And when you're driving 40 miles an hour up a hill and all of a sudden you go from 2 lanes to 1.5 lanes, it's potentially very problematic. So I would ask the city staff and you to pay particular attention. I don't think we have to do this with all the streets. Certainly we don't. But the main thoroughfares, I think in highly traveled and high-speed areas, we really need to have opened up to, full lanes very quickly, or else, limit them to 2 lanes. But I think the going back and forth is problematic. So that's the only complaint I have at this point, and the only strong suggestion I have for you. Otherwise, what I'm hearing is music to my ears.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments for our City Manager? Alderman Pittner.
Maybe just a comment. Thank you, Mayor. Maybe just a comment, maybe something that was missed in the report. It is citywide cleanup this week. And remember to put your stuff out on the front curb, not in the alley. Just some details to that, because I've found myself cleaning out the garage and finding plenty of things I thought I needed that I don't, so.
Thank you, Alderman Pittner, and you can find all that information on our website, which is minotnd.org, if you haven't seen that already. So, further questions? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And with that, we go back to our regularly scheduled agenda. We are into section number 8,